Now by Nisha Singh, who is a senior global policy and advocacy manager at Women for Women International. She joins us live from Washington, D.C. Very good to have you on the program. You heard the president of the DRC calling it the beginning of a new path. What do you make of this peace deal? Will it actually bring peace to the DRC and the civilian population?
Thank you so much for having me. It's still early. Really need to see more details of this deal and the plan to implement it. However, we have reservations that began back in June when this framework for peace in the DRC was first announced by the Trump administration. We were concerned then that this would be a peace process that excluded the communities and the women who are directly affected by the conflict. And that's what we saw come out today in the minerals deal that was passed. The president himself said, we're going to take out the rare earth. Everybody's gonna make a lot of money. Well, who exactly is making a lot of money, and what impact is this deal going to have on the communities that are really just seeking a more peaceful future? So what today's deal and this quote tell me so far is that this has always been a minerals negotiation and not really a peace process. It's prioritizing foreign mineral extraction without input from Congolese people who are affected by the conflict, and it's putting economic interests and U.S. economic interests over human lives.
So on the one hand, you have this U.S. signing a peace deal as well as that minerals deal. But on the other, you also have these recent cuts to funding of U.S. aid to countries such as the DRC. Is this a shift, do you think, in how the U.S. is sort of dealing with foreign conflicts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can't ignore the impact that the aid cuts from the U.S. have had in the DRC. They were one of the DRC's biggest bilateral donors. And I just want to say that, of course, we hope that any efforts toward peace do work. They're very welcome, but it's difficult to say whether this approach to peace would work, because these peace deals, are not centering peace. They're not centering the people who are affected by conflict. And so what we see in this shift is that it is this more transactional diplomatic process. And Women for Women International has been supporting women survivors of war for 30 years. We support them in the DRC, and our colleagues in South Kivu today told us that violence and shooting have actually intensified over the past few days. And this was also true in June after the initial U.S. brokered peace deal was signed. And since then, the security situation has continued to worsen drastically. For the first time, we had to pause programs in some areas to ensure participant safety. And so despite what's happening in Washington, the conflict hasn't stopped and the communities are still living it on a daily basis. So this shift and the cut to aid in the DRC has been impacting communities. This non-inclusive peace process has been compounding those impacts. Last year, we did consultations with over 800 women in the DRC who highlighted that war is having a huge impact on their lives, but so is food insecurity, and so is violence against women and economic instability. And it's not clear how this shift in the administration's approach, both from an aid perspective and from this transactional peace process, is going to improve that situation in the DRC.
Nisha, you mentioned that you feel that women have been excluded from this peace deal. How important do you think that women are now in terms of actually bringing about a future peace in the DRC, of sort of holding together the social fabric of the country?
Absolutely. We see in every conflict where we work and in the post-conflict period that women are the pillars of their families, women are the pillar of their communities, and they're the ones who are rebuilding during conflict and when conflict ends. The impact of the conflict in the DRC on women has been significant. The fighting between these armed groups has been going on for decades, and it is the women and the civilians who have been most affected. And it's a crisis for the women that we serve, certainly. Conflict-related sexual violence in the DRC is the worst that it has been in years. Since the beginning of this year, reports of sexual violence in North and South Kivu have jumped by nearly 700%. So the terms of these peace deals have been ignoring the thousands of women who have been raped by armed groups. They don't include any mention of justice or healing or reintegration, no provisions of justice for survivors or accountability mechanisms, which are all policy tools that are available when negotiating for peace. And yeah, there's been no meaningful participation from civil society or women in this peace process or mention of them in the rebuilding effort, despite the work that they are already doing to support their families. And they're on the front lines of conflict when it comes to providing services in their communities. So these top-down decisions that are leaving communities out of the disarmament and peace process are going to have a huge impact, because when you think about the issues that affect women and the broader communities, such as reintegrating armed actors into society, this could reintroduce perpetrators of sexual violence back into the same communities where they once terrorized women, and now they'll be disguised as peacekeepers. So survivors may be forced to seek justice from those who once harmed them without their consent and without their choice, which isn't peace at all. It's a continuation of violence. So this process ignores not only the impact of the conflict on women, but also their role in really bringing peace, justice, and healing to their communities for women and for everyone.
Nisha Singh from Women for Women International, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us tonight.